will not play the same game they did, voting things down for no reason, but she must be clear with the House on these questions. How many people will be able to take advantage of the new work and study visa route? And what will the level of the cap be? Will it be 10,000 people? Will it be 100,000 people? The government has separately confirmed they will allow Gazan students to bring dependents. We oppose this, but can she clarify how the government will ensure that people brought to the UK from a territory under Hamas control are not a risk to our security? If she finds that the Human Rights Act and ECHR prevent her from enacting these proposals, will she use primary legislation to resolve this? Has Lord Hermer agreed? By her own admission 3 weeks ago, the Home Office is not yet fit for purpose, so why then are we creating the new legal route for the Home Office to run? And will she take me up on this serious, genuine offer to meet and discuss how we can work together to resolve this asylum crisis, yes or no? I urge her to put party politics aside, meet with me and my Shadow Home Secretary. Let's find a way to work together.
Order. I was very generous with time then. Home Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I thank the Leader of the Opposition for her response to the statement. I see that the Shadow Home Secretary has been subbed out after his performance at Home Office orals. But whether it's the Shadow Home Secretary or the Leader of the Opposition herself, I'm very happy to take on the Conservative Party any day of the week. And let me start by saying we will not be taking any lessons from those opposite on how to run an effective migration system or indeed an asylum system, because I'm afraid to say to the Leader of the Opposition, she knows that her party in government gave up on governing altogether. They gave up on making asylum decisions, creating the huge backlog that it was left to this government to start to deal with. And in our first 18 months in office, removals are up 23% compared to their last 18 months in office. So I will take no lessons from anyone opposite on anything to do with our asylum system, because they simply gave up and went for an expensive gimmick that cost 700 million quid, returned 4 volunteers and was doomed to failure from the start. I will also say, Madam Deputy Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition had rather a lot to say about the European Convention on Human Rights. I don't recall the members opposite ever bringing forward any legislation to deal with the application of Article 8, the qualified right to private life, in this House. There was never a bill that sought to clarify the way that Article 8 should apply in our domestic legislation or indeed in our immigration rules. So I'm not going to take any lessons from the people that just never bothered to do that in the first place. It is this government that is rolling up our sleeves, dealing with the detailed, substantive issues that we face and thinking of proper, workable solutions to those matters. And I just say on Article 3, I think the position on Article 3 has changed across Europe. I was over at the Council of Europe in my previous role as Lord Chancellor just before the summer recess earlier on this year, and I was struck by the sheer range of other European partners who want to have this conversation. It is important, I think, that the British government leans into that conversation and seeks to work in collaboration with our European partners. The one thing that will not work is simply saying we're going to come out of the European Convention altogether. That is not and will never be the policy of this government, because we believe reform can be pursued. This is an important convention, not least because it actually underpins some of our own returns agreements, including the one with France. And so she talks about how many years it would take for us to think about reform of the convention, but it would also take just as many years, as she well knows, to start renegotiating lots of international agreements which would be affected by us coming out of the convention. So I'm afraid her solution once again will not work. And if she wanted to work together in the national interest, and look, Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm always up for working in the national interest, because nothing actually matters more to me than holding our own country together and uniting our country. But they could have started by voting for the Borders Bill, which is currently going through the House and which they have voted against at every opportunity. So forgive me if I don't take this newfound conversion to working together in the national interest with much seriousness, because their own track record suggests it should not be taken seriously. And not be taken seriously, Madam Deputy Speaker, sums up up the position of the Conservative Party. These are the people that left this government an abject mess to clear up. They gave up on governing, they gave up on running an effective asylum system, and now they turn up without so much as an apology to the British public, thinking that they've got anything to say that anyone wants to hear.
Before I call the first backbench contribution, can I remind members that in order to expect to be called in a statement, they should have been here from the start of the Home Secretary's statement. There may be members bobbing quite unnecessarily. Florence Eshalomi.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Madam Deputy Speaker, the reality is we need an asylum and immigration system based on fairness and consistency. My constituency of Vauxhall and Campbell Green is a testament to this. It's a place that's been made richer because of the people who've come here from all over the world. Some of them have fled persecution and have made a home over many years. I meet these people every week in the community and including in schools, where I see those children excited about their future. When this government came into office last year, they were right to say...
Well, hello there. It's just gone 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry. This means it's time for Dewbs & Co. A massive day for the country on an issue that is of significant importance to many of you watching and listening to this at home. I speak, of course, about illegal immigration, where we've just been hearing from the Home Secretary announcing plans, most of which, by the way, have been leaked left, right and centre, so not many surprises. But it was her restoring order and control. Their vision for how on earth we're going to get to grips with a system that is absolutely catastrophically out of control. Let's cross live to our political reporter, Olivia Utley. Olivia, bring viewers up to speed with what we've just been hearing.
Well, these are absolutely radical plans that the Labour Party is laying out. It is a huge shake-up of the asylum system, and the plans that Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, is proposing is essentially to mimic the Danish system. Now, in Denmark, they've managed to get illegal asylum claims down by 90% in just a decade. And some of the specific measures that Shabana Mahmood would copy would be for it to take longer for an asylum seeker to be able to claim permanent settled status, up from the 5 years that it currently is. She is also talking about this, a measure which has gained a lot of headlines today, seizing the assets of people who come here illegally in order to help fund their stay in the UK. Another measure, which is being deemed common sense actually by MPs I've spoken to on both sides of the House, is this measure to deport families all in one who come here illegally. At the moment, there is this very strange incentive system whereby if you come here by yourself illegally to the UK, you will be deported quite quickly, often to your home country. But if you come here and bring your children, i.e. take your children on a dangerous dinghy across the channel, then you are less likely to be deported. So essentially, people are bringing their children here in order to stay. Now, the big question is, will it work? Labour MPs, 17 of them, have already come forward and said that they are disgusted by the proposals. They talk of the moral ineptitude of the Home Secretary. So there is a bit of a question mark over whether it would get over even the hurdle of backbench MPs. If it does get over that hurdle, then there is the question of whether the courts will uphold it. Now, Shabana Mahmood believes there's some flexibility, even if we stay within the European Court of Human Rights. But as we know, thanks to what happened under Boris Johnson, it is very, very difficult to remove asylum seekers while we are in the ECHR. When Boris Johnson was Prime Minister, asylum seekers were literally removed from the runway when they were about to be flown off to Rwanda by pyjama injunctions from left-wing lawyers. So there is a huge question mark over whether it'll work. This is, lots of people are saying in Westminster, essentially a last roll of the dice for the Prime Minister. Labour's approval ratings are down at 18%, the lowest since the banking crisis of 2007-2008, and he desperately needs something to get the country back behind Labour. Is this it?
Stuff, Olivia Utley, thank you very much for bringing us up to speed. Well, hello, as I was just been saying, I am Michelle Dewberry. This is Dewbs & Co. You know the drill on this programme. We open it up to debate. Alongside me to do just that, who better on a day like this, ladies and gents? Head of Policy for Reform UK, Zia Youssef, alongside him, Labour MP Barry Gardiner. Good evening, gents. You're very welcome tonight. As, of course, every single one of you, I know, many of you will have very strong opinions to what you are hearing today. So get in touch. Without further ado, then tell me what you think. You can email me gbviews@gbnews.com. You can go to the website gbnews.com/yoursay. Of course, you can tweet or you can X me. Talk is very cheap. You might like the talk, but I'm asking you tonight, do you actually trust that the Labour Party will be able to get some of this stuff over the line? Barry Gardiner, let me start with you. How are you feeling about today's announcements?
I am sceptical about the ability of it to do what it says. I've looked carefully at the Danish system, and in fact, the reason that the Danish asylum applications were cut by 90% was not simply because they toughened up the offer and tried to reduce the draw factor. It was also because at the same time what they did was they closed the ability of anybody to make an application for asylum from overseas embassies. Denmark is a very different country to ours. People come here for very different reasons. They come here because they speak the English language. They come here because we're a much more multicultural society in which many of them have relatives and communities already established that they feel they can assimilate into. So I'm not convinced that this idea of reducing the attractiveness of the UK a la Denmark is something that can work. As I say, most of the reduction in the Danish applications came because they took away the ability of people to apply legally from outside of the country. Now, we've never had that ability in this country. We haven't allowed our embassies overseas to be able to do that, and therefore I don't think the impact will be the same. The other thing that I'm really concerned about is the fact that we have, in this idea of a 20-year path to settlement. We already have a 10-year path to settlement in this country. And what we want for the people who come here who are genuine asylum seekers, who are fleeing torture and persecution, to be able to contribute to the UK and to assimilate into the UK. If you feel that at any moment you're likely to be told, OK, it's now time for you to go back, it's going to be very difficult for them to establish relationships. It's going to be very difficult for them even to take on a rental agreement, for example, even if they're in work, because the landlord may say, well, tomorrow you may be told you've got to go back to your own country. So I think there are real practical issues. And above all, I think the treatment of families is concerning here. I think there are good elements here. I think what the Home Secretary said about stopping the merry-go-round of appeals is really welcome, because it's the way in which the judicial system has been clogged up. I think that has stopped us being able to get a handle on this at an earlier stage. So it's really good that she's talking about that. And also the establishing of a priority over the Article 8 private life, the right to a private life, and putting the public interest ahead of that. And that is a matter of policy. It's not something that we need to change the ECHR in order to do, but I'm glad that she's mentioned that. So I think at the moment, I think it's a mixed bag. I think some of the things will work. I think some of the things won't work. And I think it's perhaps been oversold on the Danish model, hoping that they will be able to claim that the same results will happen here.
I've got a man on my right that I can imagine is chomping at the bit to give his sentiment and thoughts and reaction to these announcements today. But crucially, I want to involve you in this conversation at home as well. How are you feeling about what you are hearing today? Is this music to your ears? And crucially, do you trust that this will actually even get over the line? Paula, GB News member, thanks for that. You say, I'm tired of all of this, Michelle. It feels the same old from Conservatives and Labour. She says nothing has changed. That's how she's feeling. Alison says, where's our Prime Minister in all of this? It feels to me, Michelle, like he's missing in action. Many of you as well saying it's good to finally hear these concerns not be described as far-right lunatic concerns, but actually to be acknowledged as fair and reasonable and justified complaints. I'm going to take a break. I'm going to allow him to come back in full, Zia Youssef, after the break. Join us then.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Dewberry, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk
No,
now?
that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Michelle Dewberry. Alongside me I've got Zia Youssef and I've got Barry Gardner. Now, we've just been hearing tough talk in the Commons. Most of it, I've got to tell you, already leaked to the media when it comes to the Labour Party's clamping down on illegal migration. Just remind ourselves what our Home Secretary said about 20 minutes ago.
We must act too. We will do so by making refugee status temporary, not permanent. A grant of refugee status will last 2.5 years, not 5. It will be renewed only if it is impossible for a refugee to return home. Permanent settlement will now come at 20 years, not 5. I know this country welcomes people who contribute, And for those who want to stay and are willing and able to, we will create a new work and study visa route solely for refugees, with a quicker path to permanent settlement. To encourage refugees into work, we will also consult on removing benefits for those who are able to work but choose not to. Human rights was first agreed.
I've got to tell you, there's lots of interesting things that have been announced today. One of the things that caught my eye is an increase in so-called safe and legal routes. Also, talk about tinkering, this notion that you've got these three nations and you're going to get tough with them, you know, that barely even sent any asylum seekers to this country in the first place. But we'll come on to all those points. What was your overall impressions here, Yousaf?
Well, sadly, none of this is going to work. And I said when I first read these proposals in the press yesterday that what Shabana Mahmood was doing a Sunak. She's doing a Sunak. She's making lots of bold promises. She's going to command a couple of news cycles, grab lots of headlines, and then she's going to be thwarted by her own backbench MPs. Pretty much everything you just heard Shabana Mahmood announce that she would do requires primary legislation. What does that mean? It means she needs the support of her backbench MPs. We already have large numbers going up all the time, people coming up publicly to oppose these measures. Backbench MPs don't want any of these things to happen. It's very similar to what happened in the Tory party. The only way you're actually going to not just stop the boats, and we've got to be really clear about this, stopping the boats is one thing, and that must happen very quickly. We must also deport people who are already here in the country illegally, of which there are well north of 1 million people, Michelle. To do that, you must leave the ECHR, replace it with a British Bill of Rights. You must derogate from every international treaty which would prevent deportations once the ECHR is withdrawn from. You need a mass deportation program. You must detain illegal migrants. That is the way you stop them from coming. All of this stuff that she has announced is performative. She's refused to leave the ECHR, and her own backbenchers are going to thwart her. So none of it, I'm afraid, is going to work. And, you know, we're in this situation now where, you know, I completely agree with the sentiments we've already heard from your viewers, which is that we've had 14 years of this from the Tories. There was no shortage of rhetoric about the boats. I mean, do you remember Rishi Sunak literally set himself these KPIs? Do you remember that when he was Prime Minister? He set himself the KPIs, of which he failed at every single one, including and especially the boats, which is why they were turfed out of office. And what's really interesting about this too is it does strike me as the last act of a desperate man in terms of Keir Starmer. You know, one of the things that caught my eye was the policy she's announced where the government's going to seize jewellery from people crossing the channel illegally. I think that is a tell, because unless they think that it's you know, Lil Wayne and 50 Cent coming across constantly, I can't see how the jewellery is going to raise anything remotely a sensible amount of money to pay for all of these accommodation costs. So what that tells me is this is performative. It's designed to grab headlines. Keir Starmer's massively trying to overcorrect, given that he's so far behind the polls. Now, most polls put him behind the Greens. And I think what this has done is actually, all it's going to do is I'm going to stop the boats, but it will hasten the demise, I think, of Keir Starmer.
Well, let's look at some of these MPs then that might be thorns in the side of this government. So Nadia Whittingham, do you see what she said? She's the MP for Nottingham East. Take a listen.
The Denmark-style policies briefed in the last couple of days are dystopian. It's shameful that a Labour government is ripping up the rights and protections of people who have endured unimaginable trauma. Is this how we'd want to be treated if we were fleeing for our lives? Of course not. So how can we be adopting such obviously cruel policies? Is the Home Secretary proud that the government has sunk to such depths that it's now being praised by Tommy Robinson?
I do try hard, but every time I hear some people talking about, you know, people fleeing for their lives, my eyes, they inadvertently roll. I can't help it because they're actually fleeing from France. I mean, we do need to maintain sense of that, please. Anyway, look, Tony Vaughan, he is an MP for Folkestone. He went to Twitter today and said, yes, we're at a fork in the road, basically. He was saying the idea that recognised refugees need to be deported is wrong. We absolutely need immigration controls, and where these controls decide to grant asylum, we should welcome and integrate, not create perpetual limbo and alienation. The rhetoric around these reforms encourages the same culture of divisiveness that sees racism and abuse growing in our communities. Barry Gardner, I sense trouble ahead.
Well, look, I think there are some deeply concerning elements of what the Home Secretary's announced today. And Nadia Whittome, I think, was right to remind us that what we're talking about here is not the economic migrants who are coming here pretending to have, suffered persecution or whose families are still in a war zone. But actually, we're talking about the people who actually have, because they've been found to have suffered persecution, they're accepted by Denmark in this instance as genuine refugees, and they would be accepted here as genuine refugees. And then what you're saying is these people who have been through that suffering, and we recognise that, are now stopped from being able to get on in life, to integrate, to try and contribute to our society in a positive way. And I ameliorate that somewhat in that the Home Secretary did say that they were going to open up new work and study routes, and I'll look very carefully to see what those are. But I think what's happening here is you're saying these people will have their lives on hold for 20 years. Now, what happens if they fall in love and get married to a British citizen? There's an easy way round that repatriation, that deportation at the end of the time that the government decides that they have to go back, because they will apply for settlement under a different route. What happens if they have a child while they're here, and that child is the child of a British citizen and somebody who has no right to stay here? Are you really going to rip that family apart in 20 years' time?
But Barry,
you're not. And that's why I think it's really important that we look at the detail of this. There's some perfectly acceptable elements of what the Home Secretary has announced today. But I do think we have to think about the human consequences for people who we do recognise to have been through...
OK, but Barry, let's talk about human consequences, because what's interesting is that just like every single Labour MP we seem to hear from, all of your empathy and all of your hypotheticals revolve around the foreign nationals. And that's not to completely diminish that. But what about the British taxpayers, the people watching this programme who get up in the morning, go to work, pay their taxes and are funding billions of pounds just in accommodation costs alone? The fact is that, let's talk about I'm actually deeply concerned. I will also be watching very closely what's going to happen with these new quote-unquote safe and legal routes, which Shabana Mahmood has said, Michelle. She said she's not prepared to put a cap on that at the moment. So there's a real risk here that what's happening is there's a whole load of fireworks, lots of headlines, and basically they're Trojan horsing in a new route, essentially, for these people to come not via boat anymore, which is obviously less visually damaging for them, but via other routes. And as you just said, Michelle, the notion that these people are fleeing for their lives, when, number one, they are coming from France, a country to which millions of British people go on holiday every year. So somebody should be telling them if that's a place to flee, from which one would flee for their lives. And the second point is, it was a Ricky Gervais stand-up routine he did, where he said, sure, well, if you're fleeing war, it'll be women and children first. Oh, where are the women and children? It's just you lads, is it? And the reason that's funny is because, tragically, it is true. Despite what Darren Jones said when he was sat next to me on Question Time, the vast majority of the people coming via boat are men, and the majority of them are actually working age / military age men, and they are coming from countries like Syria, like Afghanistan, like Iraq, countries with a pedigree, frankly, and a track record of not having British interests at heart. So the whole thing is a catastrophe, and I'm afraid we've just got we've had successive governments that look at all of this through the lens of empathy for the people arriving, whose first act is to break our laws, and not the law-abiding citizens who wake up and go to work in the mornings and pay their taxes to pay for it all.
Well, look, I think it's an absolutely fair point to talk about the benefits for the people in this country. And you're right.
That should be the only thing, Barry. The British state is there to serve British citizens.
Well, it is, but it's also there to serve British citizens in terms of international obligations as well. But look, let's focus on that, because one of the things that the Home Secretary has announced today, which I welcome, is the fact that whereas it used to be the case that an asylum seeker could bring their family over without having to show that they could support them with the same financial resources as a British citizen, that now is being equalised so that they will not have that advantage over British citizens. So there are elements of what the Home Secretary's proposed that are precisely there to address that unfairness to British citizens. And I welcome that. I think that's absolutely right.
Barry, the unfairness begins upon the moment they enter our country without permission and the taxpayer has to support them. Do you not accept that? Do you not accept that that's the beginning of the unfairness?
And that is why it is important that there are safe and legal routes, because you rightly make the point about the illegal entries into the UK. But when you're looking at these people are coming from France and you say, well, they're all men, where are the women and children? Well, of course, the answer to that is it is a perilous and arduous journey that they've made from Syria, from Afghanistan.
Barry, the point is, if you're fleeing a war zone, then the women and children go first. If you're entering a war zone, then the men go first.
Can I just make the point? And that is that under the rules, those men, if they make that journey and can get here, then they've been able to bring their families with them afterwards. And that is why it made sense for the men to go out on what was an incredibly dangerous journey, going across the channel in small boats, and then to be able to say, OK, now I've been accepted as a genuine refugee, I am now able to bring my family, my children and my partner with me. And that's the reason it was the men who came first rather than the women and children. So it did make sense, even though you've painted it in terms of a marauding army of young men coming to...
Well, I'm sorry, more people have crossed the channel illegally and arrived on our beaches without permission than stormed the beaches of Normandy on D-Day, Barry. It meets the dictionary definition of an invasion. It is a national security emergency. There was a foiled terrorist attack. Our security services, to their credit, successfully foiled a terrorist attack on our soil, and well-sourced. There were well-sourced articles suggesting from military intelligence that those were 4 Iranian men who crossed the channel illegally who did that.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office. It's going to be another cold night tonight. Sleet and snow across northern areas with warnings in force from tonight until latter part of this week, because it's going to be a very cold week. We've got northerly Arctic winds pushing across the country throughout the week, and this weather front across the northwest will bring a focus for that snow for more northern areas throughout tonight. We've got a risk of ice across the far northeast of Scotland through this evening and into tomorrow morning. Elsewhere across the south and east, it should stay fairly dry and clear throughout tonight. And as clear skies remain, temperatures will fall away well below freezing rurally, so expecting quite a widespread rural frost, the first of this season so far. As I said, across more northern areas, we're going to see some more significant sleet and for some of us snow. So an icy morning for parts of northeastern Scotland in particular. A lot of rain around across parts of Northern Ireland, western areas of Scotland, down towards northwestern England as well. A good deal of cloud as well. And this rain will fall as snow above around 150 metres, especially across parts of Scotland. And we'll continue to see quite persistent rain on and off throughout Tuesday, all the way through until Thursday. So we're going to start to see snow accumulations building up on higher levels, which could bring some disruption to travel on higher routes. Across more southern areas, much of England and Wales, it should stay largely dry through much of the morning, but as the afternoon goes on, there'll be more in the way of cloud and a few showers around as well. And temperatures a little bit higher than today across the far south and west due to more cloud around, but it's going to feel quite wintry throughout much of this week. Some rain across the far south and east through Wednesday morning. That will clear away as the day goes on. And then we'll continue to see this brisk northerly wind bringing some snow showers to northeastern areas of England. So we've also got a snow and ice warning in force here, as Wednesday and Thursday is looking like the coldest part of the week. So it will get colder as the week goes on. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Britain, for helping us reach 8 million followers across social media. Thank you for making us a part of your daily life.
Good evening. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. On the M27 eastbound between Junction 9 and Junction 11 in Hampshire, a broken down vehicle is causing disruption as one lane is closed. The M40 northbound in Oxfordshire has a road collision between Junction 6 and Junction 8A, closing one lane. expect delays on the A38 in Staffordshire and congestion southbound on the A50 and A5132 in Derbyshire. Planned maintenance continues at Harthill services on November 17th and 18th. And on the trains, Caledonian Sleeper and ScotRail face major disruptions between Dumbarton Central and Westerton. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
We do have problems in the UK at the moment, but I will say I don't think it's all doom and gloom. We have great safety nets here, strict protections to protect and help children. We have free education ranking 4th in the world for universities as well. Free NHS, dodgy as it may be sometimes. And we also have a lot of culture, history and green spaces, which I think is really important. 74% of children said that they can walk to a park or green space near them. So I don't think it's all that bad, but I do think we have lost our sense of community, and that's something that we need to work on.
Why do you think it is that so many fewer people are having children now? I mean, the birthing, the sort of fertility crisis that this country has entered into, to be fair, matching basically all of the developed world, fewer and fewer people are having children.
I don't think it's just about the money. I think there's actually a huge social media rise of child-free influencers. I don't know if you've seen any of these, but they're just very anti-children.
They call them dinks. Have you heard of dinks? Double income, no kids.
Oh, yeah. It's very interesting. And I think it's, you know, we look at somewhere like Somalia, where they have around average 5 children per family. They have virtually no benefit system, no pension system. Their children are their pension. And so I think in the UK, maybe we have too many options. People, I'm not saying it's all avocado on toast, but I think people are just really not seeing it as a popular option.
GB News, the People's Channel. GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Some schools are banning birthday cakes from the classroom.
Yeah, banning parents from sports. And now the great headline in the Telegraph, Labour puts the knife into nursery birthday cake. Apparently, new guidelines for the Department of Education are saying that you should not send your child into school with a cake when it's their birthday, because it's bad for them, it's going to make them fat, all the rest of this stuff. It's the nanny state once again on the march, isn't it?
Is this a new thing? Because I don't remember ever taking a birthday cake.
Yeah, we
on my
did.
birthday.
Yeah, we did too.
Took a birthday cake.
And I think some schools I've seen that have a fake birthday cake, which is not nearly as nice, with a fake cake with a candle on, so you sing happy birthday and blow out the candle. But, you know, I love the way Jacob Rees-Mogg...
yes.
European GB News presenter has waded into this row saying, well, my children's nanny sends little cakes into school for all the children.
Absolutely.
He said
the nanny sends them in.
Only socialists
know what is acceptable and what isn't.
He says only socialists want to stop such innocent pleasures. And I think there's a real point about that. One school, actually, Broxburn Primary in Harrow, is saying, don't send your child in with a cake. Donate a book to the school library instead. I mean, that is just not a good substitute, is it?
Cakes?
No, my kids are 1 and 3, so they're not quite at that age yet. But
it'll happen.
It does it. But it should, because
there is. It doesn't have to be a big splodgy cake. It can just be something.
But even if it's a bit of a treat, there's no way the calories of school birthday cake are the calories making people fat.
No.
So we should focus on the big issues rather than ruining this fun.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not a killjoy. I think kids should have a bit of fun. I just didn't know it was a thing.
Yeah,
it's all changed since my day.
I think maybe it's the teachers who don't like the sugar rush the kids get afterwards, and they can't keep control in the classroom.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs and Co. My apologies there for that slightly extended break. Now, let me return to Zia Youssef. The big topic of conversation then are these plans that have been announced by the Home Secretary in the Commons today. The safe and legal routes, this is something that's really drawn attention. I just want to tell you, guys, some of the viewer feedback that we're having so far, and then we'll continue the conversation, Zia. Peter says, I think it's a start, Michelle. They had to do something, but it doesn't go far enough. Alan says, Michelle, they should have declared a state of emergency. That would have given the Home Secretary additional powers that could potentially be not so overly easily overridden in court. One of my other viewers says, Michelle, if we are in the market for copying other countries' immigration and asylum policies, we could perhaps have a look at the USA. Stephanie says, Michelle, these policies will not stop the boats. Lots of people asking, did anyone notice that actually it wasn't really about stopping the boats? It was about how to tinker around some of the edges when these people have already arrived in this country. The Overton window, though, is shifting, Zia Youssef. You can't really deny that. Some of the language that the Home Secretary was using today, she was acknowledging that these are legitimate concerns, that areas are being potentially destabilised, and so on and so forth.
Well, there's a reason for that. And the reason is because Labour are languishing in some polls at 16%. Keir Starmer, as we speak, is the most unpopular Prime Minister on record. Rachel Reeves, the most unpopular Chancellor on record. And so people are clearly sick and tired of untrammelled mass immigration, untrammelled mass illegal immigration. The situation's totally out of control, Michelle. So the reason why the Overton window has moved is because Labour Keir Starmer is fighting for his political life. And
where is he?
Well, there you go. I mean, Shabana Mahmood has turned up, and look, there's been no shortage of Home Secretaries who have rocked up over the last 15 years who have had plenty of rhetoric in this regard. As I said, Rishi Sunak, when he was Prime Minister, set himself publicly a KPI of stopping the boats. We all know how that ended up. Now, where we are with Labour is the small boat crossings are up 40% in his first year. One thing I would also flag, we haven't heard the word smash the gangs very much. Have you noticed that? We didn't hear the word smash the gangs once. And by the way, the Borders Bill, which Shabana Mahmood actually raised in the footage earlier in Parliament, the Borders Bill still has not passed. That bill was brought in January. The reality is, just like as has happened with Sunak, her own backbench MPs will thwart this, and then you also, of course, have the judges, and unfortunately we have many activist judges in this country, and so long as you're a part of the ECHR, so long as you have failed to do what we've said we would do, which is also derogate from a whole multitude of international treaties that will then be used if we don't derogate from them for straight deportations, the boats will keep on coming, and not only must the boats be stopped, we must also deport the north of a million people who are here illegally.
Oh, sorry, you want to come back in, Barry?
Well, look, just to pick up on what one of your viewers said earlier, they said nothing has changed. That's not actually true. One of the most important things that has changed, I think, today is where Shabana Mahmood talked about activist judges in exactly the way that Zia has just done, and said that actually we're going to be making it clear now in legislation about the primacy of the public good over the private life under Article 8. One of the ways in which people have sought to thwart deportation very often is they've appealed under Article 8 of the Human Rights Act and said that their family life takes priority. Well, it doesn't. It's a conditional right, Article 8, and what the government said today is it's making it clear that that condition is subject to the public good and the immigration controls. So I think that is actually a radical change. It's something that the previous government could have done but didn't. And this talk of changing the Human Rights Act or derogating from it, of course, Zia knows that that would mean that we had to then spend probably years renegotiating a whole host of other treaties.
No, you don't, Barry, because Parliament's sovereign. Sorry, that's just not true. Parliament in the UK is sovereign, and therefore we don't need to spend years renegotiating that. The fact that you think that that is true speaks to the psychosis that the political class has, that Britain is incapable of governing itself and incapable of passing its own laws. And that's a big reason why we have this insane immigration situation in the first place.
That's simply not true. We have a number of international agreements which refer to and are constrained by.
So are you saying that our Parliament could not choose to derogate from the 1951 Refugee Convention?
Didn't listen to what I said. And it's not the 1951 Convention, it's the European Convention on Human Rights.
To which we would serve notice and leave.
Let me just explain to you why what you're saying is not as simple.
It's very simple.
I didn't say
you can serve notice under the terms of the ECHR. The British government can serve. You can serve notice
and repeat your point ad
Barry,
nauseam.
I'm going to make the point that the British government can serve notice. There's a 6-month notice period, at which point Britain is no longer governed by the ECHR. You can respond to that.
Yes, thank you. It would no longer be subject to the ECHR, but what it would have to do is it would then have to renegotiate a whole host of other treaties which are dependent on it. For example, the Belfast Agreement, the Good Friday Agreement, the agreement that we have with the rest of Europe about the movement of people across the Irish border. There are a whole host of treaties that we would then have to spend years renegotiating and getting to grips with. So the idea that this is a simple, cost-free exercise is complete nonsense. Now, you either know that, but are unwilling to say it.
At no point did we say it was cost-free, but what we said was
that you don't like it when I ask you a question.
Judges would not be able to hang their hats on Article 8 of the ECHR to prevent, for example, convicted rapists from being deported.
Don't talk over each other.
Priority. You don't like it when I ask you a very serious question. You either do know that we would have to renegotiate those other treaties, or you don't think it's important that we would have to. Which is it?
Barry. Here is the fundamental point. The British government can serve notice. The British government can serve notice. The British look who's interrupting you, Barry. Look who's interrupting you, Barry.
Do you want to answer his question or not?
Here's the point. The British government can serve notice to leave the ECHR. And at that point, after 6 months, British judges, even the most activist judge in the country, would be unable to frustrate deportations. That is what matters.
Right. So can I just intervene here before I get too deep into the weeds of technicalities and treaties and all the rest of it, because people will just fall asleep because it's a bit boring. Can I just cut to the chase of it? The fact of the matter is, people in this country, many of them watching this programme, want less migration, not more. So I want to explore this constant kind of link back to safe and legal route. Are you suggesting, is your party suggesting, that we are responsible for everyone that's suffering in every country across the land? How are these safe and legal routes going to work?
The straight answer to your question is no, we're not suggesting that. And in fact, the UK does not take as many refugees as many other countries in Europe. Not only that, but actually our offer, and people often say how we're a soft touch, our offer in terms of what people can get here in terms of benefits is actually less than it is in Denmark. It's less than it is in France.
But people at home don't really care. People at home are not sitting here going, billions of pounds of my tax are going on putting people up in 4-star hotels, but hey, don't worry, it could be worse if I lived in whatever country. They don't care because I live in the UK.
What I was addressing
How many safe and legal routes should we have?
What I was addressing there...
And moreover, where are the people coming on these quote-unquote new safe and legal routes going to be put? Where are they going to be accommodated and who's going to pay for them, Barry?
What I was addressing there was the claim that is often made that the reason these people are coming to the UK is because we are a soft touch. In fact, that is not the case. In comparison with many other countries in Europe, including France, we are a harder touch than the French.
So then why are they coming?
They're coming, many of them come, as I said at the beginning, they come because they speak the English language. Many of them don't speak Danish or French, so they come because they speak the English language. They come because we have already got a number, because of our history of colonialism, we already have settled communities which they feel that they can assimilate into, people where they know that they will also be able to speak their native tongue and that their cultures are represented, or they have family members.
Let's not get distracted from my key question. How many safe and legal routes should we be having? Are we going to reach out to all war zones? Like, what we're going to do?
No. I think the point is this. The international community has agreed back after the war that there should be refuge for people who are genuinely fleeing war zones and asylum. Okay,
but to what point, though? To what level? To what limit?
And actually, there is a new solidarity mechanism which other countries in Europe are cooperating on to ensure that there is a fair distribution of people.
Barry, how many of the people coming from France by boat do you think are fleeing a war?
The courts have determined that.
No, I'm asking you. How many people? We all know the issues in the courts, right? Yeah. People are well aware of that. I'm asking you, if you have come here, how many of the tens of thousands of people who are making the journey from France, look me in the eyes and tell me, how many of those people are fleeing a war?
They are. Many are.
They're fleeing a war. Which war in France are they fleeing from?
They're not fleeing a war in France. They're fleeing a war in Syria.
So they're not fleeing a war.
They're fleeing persecution in Afghanistan. They're fleeing persecution in other parts of the world.
And if they'd arrived here on a boat from Syria, I'd be asking a different question. I'm asking you, the ones who are coming from France, how many of them are fleeing a war?
They are fleeing a war. It's just that we are the end point that they are aiming to come to because they have family members here, because they speak the English language.
If they are simply trying to flee a war, then why would they not seek asylum inside the first safe country in which they arrive, which has for a long time been a convention? And you know the answer. You know the answer to this question, Barry. The answer is none of them fleeing, quote unquote, fleeing from France are fleeing a war. They're economic migrants arriving illegally.
And let me explain why. When Winston Churchill was responsible for drafting the Refugee Convention, when we put this into the ECHR, and it was Britain that largely did this, it was accepted that you could not simply expect the neighbouring country from a war zone to take all the refugees that might come.
Barry, that convention was drafted in 1951.
You're not
1951. People were, of course, much of the world was recovering from a tragic world war,
you're cutting across me.
We're in 2025 now.
Go on, keep cutting across if you like, but then do let me answer the question.
Am I going to get an answer to this question then? How many countries are we expected to, because there's wars and conflicts popping up all over the world. Are you seriously telling my viewers that they're going to be responsible for hosting people from all of these places?
I answered that question straight away by saying no, we're not. What we are saying is we need to be talking to all of the countries who can take people in as refugees and then distribute a fair amount to each country when there are wars.
So what's a fair amount for us to receive then?
It'll depend on where the wars are, what's happening, where those people have connections. That's what we then need to do.
But at this rate, with respect, half of the Middle East is going to have some kind of family connection in the UK the way that we're going. Well, it will. You'll laugh, but I mean, I might be slightly tongue-in-cheek with my quotes, but I'm probably not too far off.
But look, my point to you is this, that many countries in Europe are taking more refugees than we are. So we are not.
Yes, but
per capita, Barry, Britain has amongst the highest asylum rates in Europe, without a shadow of a doubt. And that is what matters. We also obviously have far less landmass than Germany or France or many other countries in Europe. So that's a disingenuous argument. The bottom line is British people, as Michelle said, the fundamental point is the British public, ultimately the voters, want a lot less. They basically want no net immigration for a period of time, and they want precisely zero illegal immigration. And by the way, Barry, all of the polling shows, there was another YouGov poll last week that came out that showed the vast majority of the British public, including a lot of Labour voters, want people who are in this country illegally to be deported. And when you say one of the reasons people are coming from France, which apparently is a war zone in your eyes from which they're fleeing, they are coming here in no small part because of the links that they already have here, many of whom are also illegal. You are actually making the argument for why we need mass deportations of the people who are here illegally and why it's so popular.
I always find this notion that so many people are coming here because they speak English absolutely fascinating, because if all of these people apparently speak English, then why we spend so much on translation services beyond me. But anyway, Mark on Twitter X has got in touch and said, Michelle, what about this notion of confiscating jewellery? He says it makes him feel quite uncomfortable. He's asking, what next? You're going to put people in striped pyjamas?
Well, I'll tell you this. I think it's fascinating that Keir Starmer obviously accused Reform and Nigel Farage of being racist, and I took great exception to that. And by the way, if Nigel had announced such a policy of confiscating jewellery, I think the police in this country would have turned up at his door. So look, what I will say is this: what matters is that the boats stop coming and that people who are in this country illegally get deported. Taking people's jewellery is going to make no difference to that. You've got to detain them and you've got to deport them. And instead of actually doing the hard yards, leaving the ECHR, doing all of the things that we've talked about doing that take real political courage, and yes, you need a parliamentary party who are going to back you on it, and that's why we need a reform majority next time. Instead, they're doing these things which are simply designed to grab headlines and, frankly, pull the wool over the eyes of British people.
Are you comfortable with this notion of confiscating?
No, I think it's awful, absolutely awful. And in fact, if you listen to the Danish foreign minister, who used to be the prime minister of their country when all those policies were going through, he admitted that it was never done. It had to be jewellery worth more than £1,300, and they never did it. And he said we overstepped the mark in passing policies like that, which were abhorrent and that we shouldn't have done. And I think it's ridiculous that was something that this government trailed to what it saw as a friendly Sun newspaper, thinking that it would catch headlines. I think it's a disgusting...
Well, the reason they gave was also interesting. They said it was, quote, supposed to contribute to their costs. And again, unless the people coming across the channel are rappers who live on Miami Beach, it's not going to contribute anything remotely significant. So this is the fundamental point. I think that's really telling that this whole agenda, the whole purpose behind all of this was to grab lots of headlines, and it's going to have absolutely no substance.
You haven't addressed the fact that, because you took it back into Article 8, and you haven't addressed the fact that today the Home Secretary has announced that private life will not be given priority. Surely that's something that you welcome.
She's announced it. Is she going to get that through a parliament? That requires, Barry, that requires primary legislation, and sadly,
well, you see,
that is the very reason why it's going to have no impact on court decisions.
Any time where you think you might actually be forced to agree with the policy that the government announces, you say, well, it'll never get it through. The point that I'm asking you is, do you agree that she was right to announce it?
Just a quick yes or no, because I'm almost out of time.
We need to leave the ECHR entirely. We need to leave the ECHR entirely. It's just not going to work.
You always avoid
It's not going to work.
One of my viewers, Kim, says, Michelle, today in Parliament, Kemi Badenoch, I don't know if you missed this or saw it, Kemi Badenoch basically offered, extended a hand of help to try and get these things over the line. Shabana Mahmood basically said, we don't need your help, thanks, but no thanks. Kim says, Michelle, I don't like this. She shouldn't have been so quick to push away the support from Kemi Badenoch. Kim, my viewer there, has a sense that politicians should be working together for the collective good of this country rather than separating on party lines of an issue this magnitude. Anyway, look, this conversation, I'm sure, will carry on another day. But for now, gents, thank you. Thank you at home. Have a great night. I'll see you tomorrow night.
Thank you, Britain, for making us the fastest growing news website in the nation. Because the truth matters, and so do you.
Good evening. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. The M8 is closed eastbound at Junction 3 due to a road incident. Expect delays on the M4 westbound in Bracknell Forest between junctions 8 and 10. In Derbyshire, congestion affects the A38 southbound between the A50 and A5132 junctions. In Staffordshire, the A38 northbound faces heavy traffic between the A5121 and A5132. The M62 has delays on its clockwise exit slip at junction 18 due to a police incident. And on the trains, significant disruptions impact services between Dumbarton Central